I am extremely grateful for the advice I got, which encouraged me to take my final year project forward after university. I entered a number of business startup competitions and was awarded the funding I needed to set up my own business. It completely changed my life. Although I had actually had a graduate scheme lined up after graduating, I decided to take the risk and start my own company. Things took off surprisingly quickly, and I can honestly say that I have never had any regrets about my decision.
Our mission is to be a university that has a global significance, to be a leader in higher education, providing excellent research and teaching, and contributing to the most important issues and debates of modern times. We are proud that this university is increasingly having an impact on practice and thinking worldwide.
Child language brokers are children or young people who translate or interpret on behalf of family members or others who do not speak the local language. When settling into a new country, children often learn the local language more rapidly than their parents and other adults. As a result, youngsters start taking on the role of language broker in a number of different contexts such as shops, banks, schools, doctors, dentists, welfare offices, police stations, housing offices, among many others.
The aim of our research was to explore how moving home at a young age affected the development of preschool children. There are many different reasons why families choose to move home, some of which are positive and some less so. Over a period of 10 years, our research team has investigated whether the conditions surrounding moving home, or indeed the fact of moving itself, contribute to children's development problems.
This year, the National Environmental Science Competition received excellent undergraduate and postgraduate entries from all across the country, with a wide range of projects. We are delighted that our awards are encouraging exciting and valuable projects that go beyond research and analysis to develop solutions for a number of key problems. Information about the shortlisted projects will be posted on our website in the first week of June.
Fiscal deficit is the difference between the total income of the government from total taxes and non-debt capital receipts and its total expenditure. A fiscal deficit situation occurs when the government's expenditure exceeds its income. This difference is calculated both in absolute terms and also as a percentage of the gross domestic product of the country. A recurring high fiscal deficit means that the policies are wrong, spending is unplanned, or institutions are corrupt.
The nation had few taxes in its early history. From 1791 to 1802, the United States government was supported by internal taxes on distilled spirits, carriages, refined sugar, tobacco and snuff, property sold at auction, corporate bonds, and slaves. The high cost of the War of 1812 brought about the nation's first sales taxes on gold, silverware, jewelry, and watches. In 1817, however, Congress did away with all internal taxes, relying on tariffs on imported goods to provide sufficient funds for running the government. The Jobs and Growth Tax Relief and Reconciliation Act of 2003 accelerated the tax rate cuts that had been enacted in 2001, and temporarily reduced the tax rate on capital gains and dividends to 15%. In 2004, the U.S. was forced to eliminate a corporate tax provision that had been ruled illegal by the World Trade Organization. Along with that tax hike, Congress passed a cornucopia of tax breaks, which for individuals included an option to deduct the payment of whichever state taxes were higher, sales or income taxes.
Australian Muslim women dress in diverse styles and are increasingly choosing to engage with global fashion trends while also expressing their faith. Faith, Fashion, Fusion explores Sydney's emerging modest fashion market and the work of a new generation of fashion designers, retailers, and bloggers offering stylish clothing and fashion advice to Muslim women.
One of the striking features of the town of Griffith is its Italianness. Some 60% of its population can claim an Italian heritage. Griffith was established in 1916 as part of the new Murrumbidgee Irrigation Area, MIA. The largest town in the Riverina, it was designed by Walter Burley Griffin. Returned servicemen and assisted British migrants were encouraged to take up irrigation blocks after the First World War when the MIA failed to attract settlers.
April 24, 2015, marks the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the Armenian Genocide. Much of the world considers the massacre to be the first genocide of the 20th century. According to a majority of historians, between 600,000 and 1.5 million Armenians were murdered or died of starvation at the hands of the Turkish government. Although studies from Earth using optical and radio telescopes had accumulated much data on the nature of celestial bodies, it was not until after World War II that the development of powerful rockets made direct space exploration a technological possibility. The first artificial satellite, Sputnik I, was launched by the USSR on October 4, 1957, and spurred the dormant U.S. program into action, leading to an international competition popularly known as the space race. Explorer I, the first American satellite, was launched on January 31, 1958. In the decade following Sputnik I, the United States and the USSR between them launched about 50 space probes to explore the Moon. The first probes were intended either to pass very close to the Moon or to crash into it hard landing. Later probes made soft landings with instruments intact and achieved stable orbits around the Moon.
Space Shuttle, reusable U.S. space vehicle. Developed by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and officially known as the Space Transportation System, it was the world's first reusable spacecraft that carried human beings into Earth orbit. It consisted of a winged orbiter, 2 solid rocket boosters, and a large external fuel tank. As with previous spacecraft, the shuttle was launched from a vertical position.
There are 6 basic parameters that determine whether an environment is suitable for life as we know it: temperature, pressure, salinity, acidity, water availability, and oxygen content. Advanced life is restricted to a narrow range of these parameters, but primitive microorganisms exist over a much wider range. Data already collected by space probes essentially rule out advanced life on other planets of our solar system. Artificial satellite that functions as part of a global radio communications network. Echo 1, the first communications satellite, launched in 1960, was an instrumented inflatable sphere that passively reflected radio signals back to Earth. Later satellites carried with them electronic devices for receiving, amplifying, and rebroadcasting signals to Earth. Relay 1, launched in 1962 by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, was the basis for Telstar 1, a commercially sponsored experimental satellite. The Soviet Union launched the core module of the Mir space station in February 1986. It was enlarged several times so that it could accommodate a crew of up to 6 cosmonauts. The Mir program was enhanced by having international teams conduct experiments at the station: Afghanistan, Bulgaria, France, Germany, Great Britain, India, Japan, Syria, and the United States, in addition to Russia and other nations that were formerly part of the Soviet Union, participated.
The Global Positioning System, GPS, whose satellites replaced the Transit series, uses a web of 24 Navstar satellites in 12-hour orbits. The first Navstar satellite was launched in 1989, and the system began full operation in the 1990s. The satellites broadcast time and position messages continuously, and GPS receivers employ the more accurate triangulation method to determine position. The signals picked up by a GPS receiver can calculate position to within a few yards.
Belongings tells the stories of some of these people through personal mementos, photographs, and memories. Some are treasured objects brought from the old country, others are souvenirs of the journey out, or keepsakes from their first home or job. All help us understand how migration changed their lives and, through the cultures and traditions they brought with them, the lives of all Australians forever.
The defining question about global order for this generation is whether China and the United States can escape Thucydides' trap. The Greek historian's metaphor reminds us of the attendant dangers when a rising power rivals a ruling power, as Athens challenged Sparta in ancient Greece, or as Germany rose to rival Britain a century ago.